Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of my story, The Table. Your story is uniquely yours and it's yours to tell. We continue in the vein of great love, great loss, and great hope. How does one make the impossible possible? How does one make excruciating pain go away? Today, our guest is no stranger on the podcast of my story. We welcome Leisl Hillman on our set in this new season. We have an additional guest, Debra Sowter. We welcome you as a grief counselor, as a bereavement facilitator, and so much more to help us, to help me, to help Liesel, to help others who are grieving on this journey. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you, Rhonda.
Liesel, you have a unique story. The viewers will know that Liesel was on season 1 of the My Story podcast, sharing a unique story. Liesel is here to tell part 2 of her unique story. So Liesel, my dear friend, over to you.
Thank you, Rhonda, and thank you for having me in part 2, which I never imagined I would be sitting here doing. So last year, June 2021, I got COVID, and 2 days later, my husband was also diagnosed with COVID. So yeah, it was within a week we had all the symptoms, and we've got our 2 kids in the house with us, and they were fine. And we were doing much better towards the end of week 1, and suddenly my husband took a bad turn, started getting fevers. We rushed him to emergency, and they admitted him, and he had tested positive to COVID pneumonia. So there we were, it was still in high lockdown, so we were not allowed to visit him because the hospitals were not allowing any visitors. So he was in normal ward. 2 days later, he took a bad turn and they moved him to ICU. And luckily enough, by then, Milnerton Mediclinic had changed the rules where you could get one visitor for 15 minutes a day, but you had to book your visitations every morning. So he had COVID pneumonia. Every day he was literally, different things were happening to him. And within a few days, they said that, his heart is under so much stress and strain, and they're going to need to intubate him, because if they don't, they're scared he's going to get a heart attack, because his heart was working so much harder because of the COVID pneumonia and all the pressure it was putting on his lungs. So they intubated him, and he actually did have a heart attack in a coma, and he managed to come out of that okay. And the Wednesday after that, they woke him up. He was obviously disorientated, and but the doc was quite positive that he was doing well. And 2 days after that, he had a massive heart attack, and he actually never survived. So he passed away, but it was quite a shocker to all of us. I mean, my kids hadn't seen him the whole 18 days he was in hospital. So, it was, for me, it wasn't disbelief, but just the thought that you're never going to see this person again, ever. We were supposed to grow old together. We were supposed to do so much things together. My poor kids now growing up without a father. So, that was 7.5 months ago that this happened. He died on the 16th of July, 2021. So it's been quite an emotional roller coaster. Yeah.
Liesl, the My Story podcast, family and friends offer you our sympathy.
Thank
and
you.
We're so sorry for your loss. I've lost my spouse. You lost James, your beloved. And I'm so truly sorry for your loss and where you found yourself after telling that unique story about James' recovery in episode 1.
Sure.
So really, I'm sorry, and my deepest condolences.
Thank you.
In C.S. Lewis' book, A Grief Observed, he says, "No one ever told me that grief feels so much like fear. The same fluttering in the stomach, the restlessness, the yawning. I keep on swallowing. And other times it feels like being mildly drunk or concussed." So tell us a little bit of how you've journeyed from there in 7.5 months to what C.S. Lewis says. Has that been a reality besides all the other losses? Your primary loss, your secondary loss, your being old and grey together.
Yeah.
How has it been? How's your journey been? How's grief been?
Yeah, look, the grief is not for the faint-hearted. It's been quite a journey. I think it's such an emotional roller coaster. So I've been going for counseling because I just feel like you should get help if you need help. From day one, there's so much going on because there's the financial side, there's all the maintenance of the house, there's your kids that are grieving, and how do you manage to deal with your kids also, and help them through this process, even though you are trying to navigate yourself, what's going on. My mind plays so many different games. I don't know how to explain it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A state of confusion.
Complete
turmoil.
Confusion, turmoil.
Widow's
anger.
fog.
Yeah, widow's fog, anger. Just like, did that actually just happen? Small things can set me off. Last Sunday, I came home from the beach and I smelled a braai, and I was like, oh my word, James would have been braaiing at home. That was his thing, my husband did everything in the house in terms of maintenance. So that's been a huge change for us, an adjustment, learning to get somebody else to do something in your house that, took 5 or 10 minutes to do. It didn't cost anything. Now you've got to pay somebody to do that. And then just being on your own, I'm a very independent woman, but just that you are now a single woman, you are called a widow. What do? You sleep alone at night. You've got to be mom and dad to your kids.
I know.
You've got to be strong for your kids, even though you are not strong.
In a recent podcast, I made a statement that said, death changes life. It changes how you eat. It changes how you shop. It changes how you go to bed. It changes how you wake up. It changes everything in your life. And Debra, coming back to you, how should I or we or even the viewers out there who are grieving, how do we deal with our grief? And what do we do going forward? Help Liesl. Help me. Help others in our circle that's experienced the loss and death of a partner. Help our viewers out there and guide us with your expertise. As best you can.
That's a tall order. I wish that I had magic words for you ladies and for everybody out there. But I think initially when it comes to loss, we need to first acknowledge how hard it is. So I think, a lot of times people tend to not only gloss over it, but I think they don't really have an understanding, because we don't really talk about grief. We're uncomfortable about grief in our culture. And so people don't know what to say. I'm sure you both have realized people will come with very strange platitudes and strange things they say to try and make you feel better, which has the exact opposite reaction. So, before you can make it better, you have to sit with that pain. So healing is in the pain. And I think The other issue is just that people don't know how long it takes. So, you know, very often you've had your funeral and you've had the ceremony and everyone's been around you and you've had a lot of support, and it gradually starts fading. And then it's just you and your family.
Yeah.
And that's actually when you need more support than ever.
Absolutely.
So, you know, in early grief, we look at first 2 years. The first 2 years are really tough. So your first year is all the firsts, which obviously are terribly difficult. But somehow there's still a little bit of that surreal kind of, is this really happening to me feeling? The second year is very real. So, I mean, and other people don't realize that, you know, so often it gets worse before it gets any better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't, you know, even words like closure don't apply to grief, because grief changes you. Like you said, Rhonda, it changes your whole life. So like when you say, you know, things trigger you, it's like if you go shopping and you see things that were your husband's favorite snack or something you would always buy only specifically for him, the triggers are everywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just that, and it's a pity that we're not more educated about grief and that we don't actually speak about it. So when you ask for, you know, how do I guide you? It's so difficult because firstly, my advice is to sit with the pain. So if you're going to, you know, grief will wait for you. So if you're going to run away from it or try and avoid it or keep yourself super busy so that you don't feel it, it's going to wait. And, you know, so even if something else happens, it might trigger, you know, you have another loss or something else happens and you have a much sort of bigger reaction because you haven't really coped with your grief. So day to day, I think you need to basically sit with it, find people that will support you and that can sit with your pain. So you'll find out who your real friends are too. In grief.
Yeah,
So people you thought would be there for you disappear, and people you didn't know would be there suddenly are there on a day-to-day basis. So be with people that can sit with your tears, you know, that you can talk about your partners forever if you need to, you know, and will go at your pace. I think that's the most important thing initially. And then things like self-care, obviously trying to look after yourself. I mean, I've had clients before that can't actually get out of bed initially. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because grief is visceral. You know, it's an assault on your body. So you feel it in your heart, you feel it in your body. You feel nauseous, you feel sick, you have stomach ache, your heart races. Like you said, C.S. Lewis, how well he describes that feeling. And if you don't understand that, people go, you know what, you need to get up, you need to go to gym, you can stick to your stuff. Sometimes you just can't do that. And you don't need anyone to judge it.
Yeah.
So yeah, self-care, trying to at least get to some kind of, you know, a little bit of food. I always think that when you've lost somebody, you have such a profound loss that you actually need somebody to come look after you. You know, it's like being in an emotional ICU. That's how you should treat yourself. And take such care. And it's also, sometimes we don't have the time because, you know, you have to get back to work or you have to get back to some kind of reality. And that's also an issue because, you know, you get like a few days off from work and then that's your family responsibility leave. And you need to go back to reality. How is that possible that we give people such a short space of time? And very often I've also seen with clients before they will initially get back to being busy because that sort of saves them. And 6 months later, everything falls apart. And now they want to take leave and work's going, but you've already taken your leave.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all, for me, it's just a grief illiterate culture that we live in. And then obviously moving forward, it's also to take all of the things of your loved one and incorporate that into your life. So, you know, ideally in grief theory, it's supposed to be reintegration, so investing into your life, but also taking your person with you. So death ends a life, but not a relationship.
I like that, Debra.
Yeah. And then, you know, whatever it is that brings you comfort, or if it's, you know, rituals that you do, or you have a memorial candle that you light every night when you have dinner, or you have their special dinner once a week, or, you know, those kinds of things. You need to be around people that also allow you to speak about him.
Yeah.
You know, and you laugh and you cry together. So it's a long process to get there, but ultimately healing comes through the pain and it comes through remembering. So it's, you know, the theory of continuing bonds is the theory of grief now, where you continue to connect. So for example, if you have, you know, shirts of your husband, you can make teddy bears for the kids or for yourself, you know, with his clothes, or a quilt, or there's so many things. You can have memorial jewelry done, fingerprint jewelry, photos, candles, you know, you can be as creative as you want. You can even sponsor like if your person was involved in sports, you can sponsor a cup for something, you know,
that person's
in their honor.
name.
Yeah.
Debra, that's
And
great.
that
Yeah.
gives you so much comfort, because they're still there.
Yeah.
And they're still there, and then they will always be there, because I mean, you have children, and you have families, and everybody remembers them together. And I think it's in the remembering together that there is a healing or a comfort together. But it's not an easy journey at all.
Yeah.
And it's not a quick one.
Yeah, I think you've said so many profound things. I mean, for me, I just find it, at times, it's so exhausting. It's so exhausting to be grieving all the time. And, people often say, you're so strong. And meanwhile, I keep saying, I'm not at all strong.
Yeah.
Yes, I do get up. I show up for myself firstly and for my kids. I mean, I think if it wasn't for my kids, I would be in a different space right now. But like you also said, the way we eat, our eating habits have completely changed. The way I cook, what I'm doing, so many different things. But it's always been a thing for me that I've always told my kids that we are not going to be victims. We are not going to be victims of our situation, and we are not going to go out there and say, please feel sorry for me, my husband's just died, or my dad has just died. I feel like we are survivors, and we're obviously still here for a reason on this earth, and we can impact other people's lives in different ways, and our story, telling our story might impact somebody else's lives, and so many women have come and shared situations with me which they've never before, and I'm talking very close friends of mine, which they've never before. And so I just think it's so important that we should speak about it, because you never know when you are actually going to impact somebody else's life. That's so good, Liesl. And what you also said, I think, is quite important, is self-care and self-love, because you can just, it's hard to get up, it's hard to eat healthy, it's hard. And I never thought I'd say this, to exercise, but grief also attacks you in different ways. I mean, my body, I've got an injury I've picked up, which I can't understand it. But I think it's my body's way of saying, you need to just take a back seat, slow down. You need help. So I've kind of allowed that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So good, Liesl. So very good. Thank you. Debra, if you could just maybe, as we wrap up, touch on the spiritual aspect of help and reaching out. What would your take be on that? Give us a little bit of spiritual guidance and input.
Yeah, well, everybody obviously has a different approach to that, but I think if you have a faith of some type, that just grounds you and gives you hope. And it, without that, it's really hard to kind of move forward. So I think having a faith and a belief in God really helps. From a day-to-day basis, there's so many beautiful verses in the Bible about, God understands suffering from within, obviously. And it just helps to know that you're not alone, and that also your loved one, where they are.
Yes.
You will see them again. That doesn't help in the now in terms of the physicalness of missing, but that at some point there will be a reunion, and that just gives you so much hope. And I think without that, that's really difficult if you don't have that.
I like that.
So yeah,
absolutely, I agree totally. I mean, I don't know how I would have managed without God.
Yes,
and I mean, I think God also places the right people at the right time
in your life
when you need it. In your life, and I mean, I've seen it. It's been amazing.
Yes,
it really has.
It's very comforting. I always say God doesn't cause us any pain. He doesn't want us to have pain. It doesn't come from Him.
Yes.
But He takes what happens to us and He uses it for our good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And in that, we just have more confirmation about the fact that He's there.
There is hope.
Yeah. And I mean, the process still doesn't get easier in terms of how it feels. Yeah. But you've got hope, and hope is what we all need to hang on to.
I like that we end on a positive note, like we have hope.
Yes.
And Liesl, I always say, God must think us very unique that He took our spouses away, that we can navigate and fly solo.
Yeah.
As hard as it is, He must think that we very unique to be able to. And so in that, I think, so Lord, help me, give me wisdom, give me vision, give me provision, and help me to see and navigate forward.
Yeah, Absolutely. And I mean, we still have, most of our lives ahead of us. So we can still make such a big difference
I like that.
in our lives and in our kids' lives, grandkids' lives, friends, families' lives, and through our coping and managing
And living testimony.
Yes, we are able to, empower others to do the same, no matter what their struggles are, because we are grieving, but there's so many different forms of grief. Divorce is a form of
non-bereavement
grief.
losses, absolutely.
So there's lots of those kinds of griefs that, just is so profound, and people are so encouraged when they tell me, if you can do it, Liesl, then surely they can also do it. If they're going through struggles, and I'm also, but look at me and look at them, it kind of is encouraging,
hope again.
Through their hope, I get hope. So
you get encouraged.
I get encouraged.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
keep moving forward. And to me,
like
every
that.
day
Keep
it's just
moving forward.
keep moving forward in the right direction, as opposed to moving backwards. Even if it is just getting up in the mornings,
Yes.
or washing your hair, or making a
It's the
healthy
little
meal.
things. It's the small things, yeah.
And
It
you can
is
tick
the
that
small
box.
things.
You can tick
it's
that box.
ticking, and you've actually accomplished, as opposed to digging yourself such a deep hole that it's so hard to get out of.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite important, is to just take one step, one day at a time. Don't get too caught up in too big a picture that you've got to do so much, because now you're on your own and you've got to cover expenses, houses, maintenance, kids. Just
it
one
becomes
step.
overwhelming.
It becomes overwhelming that you actually regress as opposed to progress. So for me, that has always been just one day at a time. And that's what I've told my kids. We just move forward one day at a time. And your grief is no bigger or smaller
than somebody
my
else's.
grief.
Yeah.
I keep telling my kids that we all are grieving, and we're all grieving so differently. And it's interesting, in our household, there's myself and my two kids, how different we are all grieving.
Yeah, everyone has a different personality and
Process.
style, and
Absolutely.
Yes.
So
Well, ladies, thank you. Thank you, Debra,
Pleasure.
for sharing that insights with us. Thank you for giving little tidbits of how to help and navigate.
We could talk about this a lot
We
longer.
can. And
Yeah.
Liesl, thank you for being so vulnerable, for being so open, and for sharing your story. And we wish you all of the best. The My Story podcast, The Table, wish you all of the best, and we're watching you on your social media, and we wish you well.
thank you very much, and thank you to your amazing strength. I mean, we are both widows now. We're going to start the Widows Club. But thank you, because I think it's so important that we do lean on each other. Because there are so many widows out there that we can all relate in a way.
And help.
And help each other
And help.
out. But thank you for this platform. It's
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you, ladies. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. See you next time on the set of My Story, The Table.